So we are going to be talking, like I said, all about the realtor's daily schedule today, how to get the most out of your day. This is a super important topic, guys, probably one of the most important topics. If you aren't where you want to be in your real estate business, a lot of it could have to do with how you are scheduling and, kind of setting up your day. I think that that's obviously for me, I value that as probably one of the things that's helped me to get where I'm at the most is just, I stay very accountable and very consistent with my time. Even though nobody's, sitting behind me telling me what to do. I just, know what I got to do every single day. I get to work, and I try and show up every single day, like, and make my commitments. And that has over now I've been, in the business for about 14 years, just doing that every single day, staying accountable to myself, has, landed me where I'm at and, which is in a good spot, a great place, where I can kind of run the business that I want, but I also get the freedom, time freedom to do what I want, with my family and all this type of stuff. And so that's the other thing that I will say that, sometimes some people might feel that when you time block or when you do these things that put structure to your day, that it feels rigid and it feels like, not that freedom lifestyle. But if anything, I would say that that's what's given me the freedom, right? And it even gives me the freedom throughout my week, just to know like what I need to accomplish. And then when I can actually take time off, because that's the other problem. You might be working a lot. You might be thinking like, hey, it's not that I don't work, I work too much, and you may not know, when to stop, or you might not even give yourself like the ability to stop because you don't think that you've accomplished enough. I've struggled with that in the past for sure. And it's one of those things where now having more structure and knowing like, hey, what does a productive day look like? What's a productive week look like? It gives me kind of that sense of freedom to know that like when I'm done, or, when I say that I'm done for the day, like I can hang it up and feel good about my day. And so, yeah, so, okay, cool. We got a lot more people tuned in. What's up, Brent? We got Samantha coming in from Fort Hood. Hi, Samantha. Good to see you. We got, who else? Ashton. Where is he? Corpus Christi. I love it. Good to see you, Ashton. All right. Very cool. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into what we're going to be covering today. So number one is consistency. That's, I think, before we start talking about your schedule and your calendar, like none of that matters if you're not consistent or if you're not accountable to yourself, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about some tips on consistency, time blocking, and actually like how I time block, like some of the tips that I've held myself to be able to be a better time blocker. I'm still not perfect by any means. And I'm sure, it's always just one of those things that we're constantly keep getting better at. But time blocking, we'll talk a little bit about that. Talk about the daily power list. This is something that I kind of started incorporating into my business plan probably about 3 years ago. And Andy Frisella actually, talks about it. He's got a podcast, and we'll talk a little bit about that and kind of just some of my best practices, how I've, kind of worked with that system. Delegation and systems. So maybe you're at the spot now where, you're getting maximum efficiency of yourself, and you got to start to learn to delegate or to utilize systems to be able to get more productivity out, right? So kind of, talk about that transition. And then the ideal schedule, like what my day looks like, how I kind of try and handle my day to get the most use out of my work time. And now, obviously, everybody's ideal schedule may differ and maybe a little bit different, but I will, talk about just the categories of what's in my schedule, so you can kind of see if that fits along with, how you would like to run your business. So, all right, number one, the first thing that we're going to talk about is consistency. Okay, so there's 4 things that I really think that you need to know about consistency. The first thing is that, number one, you have to decide for yourself that it's possible to be consistent, right? Maybe you're coming from a place where like you've just not ever been consistent and you think, well, I can't be consistent. I'll tell you, I'll break that myth. Everybody can be consistent. Even if you've not been in the past, it just truly takes a decision that you're going to commit to it, and you need to practice it, right? You can't beat yourself up if you're not consistent. Like all of us will fall short of being consistent 100% of the time. But it's one of those things that over time, if you just keep trying to get a little bit more consistent, get a little bit better, and always have that in your thoughts, you will get more consistent over time. So it's very tough to just like, stopping smoking cold turkey or something. Like I'm sure that's got to be very difficult, right? Like I've never done it, but it's got to be very difficult. It would be the same thing of like saying like I got to be 100% consistent. It'd be so difficult to do that. But it does, over time, it gets a little bit easier to get better at your consistency. Number two, figure out what your why is. Why, like, understand clearly why you need to be consistent. Like, what are you being consistent for? What's the difference that it's going to make in your life? And once you understand like why you're going through some of the pains or the struggles that it takes to be consistent, because it will be inconvenient sometimes to be consistent. It's tough. You're gonna have to say no to a lot of things sometimes to be consistent. But you got to understand, like, and have a big enough why of why you are being consistent. Like, what will your life look like? What will your business look like if you can be consistent for a year, for 3 years, for 5 years doing something? Like, what will it look like? And have that be your beacon, your guide and light for why you're doing that. The third thing is, start by doing one thing consistently. Like this is, I think, the problem that a lot of people make who are trying to make a change with their consistency is, like they had these lofty goals and they're all of a sudden like they're not consistent at all. But now they're like, but now I'm going to be consistent amongst everything, right? I'm going to time block my entire calendar and I'm going to be consistent amongst everything that I do. But then they fall short because, one thing leads to another. They're not consistent with one thing. They're like, oh, well, now I've already not been consistent with this. So I'll kind of skip on this. Like, just try and focus on, when you're starting out, just being consistent on one thing, like one measurable habit that you can make in your life. It could be, getting up earlier, right? Like it could be, working out the first thing that you do of the day. It could be a business thing. Like I'm going to prospect for, 2 hours every morning, Monday through Friday, like whatever it is. Don't say like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be consistent amongst this. And I'm going to, you can layer that stuff on over time. But in the beginning, if you can just truly hold yourself accountable to being consistent on one thing, that's like, you don't break it no matter what. Like that's the ideal way to get started with getting better at consistency. And then the other thing is, even when you're creating these ideas of consistency, don't just do things like, don't make a consistency goal based around something that's just for the now. Also think about it like for the future. Like, like how is this going to look a year from now? Like do you want to be consistent for this thing for that long of a time? Don't just think of like short-sighted things. Like if it's going to be consistency, like think of it as a long-term strategy. Like I'm going to be consistent along this because I'm going to make this a major pillar of my business, right? And I'm going to, do this for a very long time. Maybe, like I say, it could be a health thing. Like do something like, yeah, it might be uncomfortable. Try to make ways that you can make it more comfortable or make it more enjoyable. But if it's going to be something that like you just absolutely hate and you're like, you would hate your life in, a year or 2 years or 3 years if you were still doing it, then like think of another way to achieve that result that you want that's going to be more enjoyable, because it's going to be really hard to be consistent among something that you really don't want to do for a long period of time, right? So find something that that you want to do, that you do get joy from. I know people that instead of strength training, they would rather, do like cardio or they would rather do yoga or something. Like if strength training is not your thing and you don't want to work out and lift weights, like find another way to achieve, what it is that you want, your overall goal, but doing it with a way that you want to do it. Right. So anyways, those are the 4 things to talk about consistency. Guys, if you're getting value out of this, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I go live every single Tuesday, and I release 3 new videos of real estate agent training every week. So make sure that you're doing that. I appreciate all the comments that we're getting in here, guys. I'm taking a look at it. All right. We've got focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking is a fallacy. Look at this. Here we go. Living in San Antonio, Texas. That's Lily Handy. What's up, Lily? Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Yeah, I agree. I will say I do a lot of things. Like I do multitask in a sense that like in any given day, I have, multiple things that I have to do. But I do believe that like having like a lot of tabs. I was actually just on a call with this where I was with a partner agent of mine, literally looking at his tabs on his Google Chrome, and you couldn't even see the words. There was just so many tabs, and I was like, that would stress me out. Like I've got to finish what I'm doing, and then I can move on to the next thing. I love like whenever, and I'll talk about this here in a bit, like I love pen and paper and being able to like check things off, cross things off. So like all the time, I literally have a notepad with like everything that I've got to do sitting right next to me. That way I can, go back to it. I can look at it. I can cross things off. And, and so it's one of those things like having all of that stuff always ongoing, I think can be a potential issue. And it's a lot of us struggle with that. We think we're being more productive by multitasking. But in actuality, we might be hurting ourselves, right? Like take it to fruition, even if it means, you got to go down the rabbit hole and like knock all these things out. You kind of have to do that. And time blocking will help a little bit to alleviate the idea of having to multitask. So we'll talk about that here just in the next slide now that we're talking about time blocking. All right. So here's the thing, obviously time is finite. You cannot make more of it. So being really structured about your time is one of the most important things you can do for your business, for your life. There's everything else we can get more of, make more of, whatever, but time is not, right? But yet most of us as human beings are not super structured. We're not super, purposeful about setting our time and really looking at our time as something we have to manage, right? Or you may not want to manage your time. I don't know. Some people, it's just you don't want to manage it. It's like, hey, I just kind of do what I want to do because I want this freedom. I promise you, it's the other way around. You start managing your time better, you get the freedom, right? All right. So the other thing, when you have a time block, this is the cool part about it, is when you block your calendar, you inevitably you're going to get things that take up your, they're going to try and distract you or take away from your time. And it's okay if you do have to jump onto another task. Like I'm not saying that you can't ever, deviate from your time block, but it really, when you have that time block, it at least makes you think, is whatever that I've got to deviate to worth me stopping what I'm supposed to be doing right now in my time block and potentially, breaking my time block, versus can this thing be scheduled in another time block down the road, right? Like whatever the next opening is that you've got, or if you've got some kind of just generalized time, like, and that's what I'll talk about when I talk about my schedule, is I've got time where I do need like time to just do general things like catching up and stuff. So can that thing go into that category, or does it actually need to be done right now within whatever time block that you're doing? So that's pretty cool that when you have a time block, you can actually start to make those decisions. The other big thing that a lot of us struggle with is under and overestimating the time it might take you to do a task. And you're like, well, I don't know how long of a time block that I should give to this thing. And then sometimes you're worried that like, oh, well, I went over the time. And so that might derail your entire day, or like you underestimate the time and now you're sitting there like wondering what the next thing to do is. And here's what I'll say about that. Like, so many of us, we overestimate what we can do in a day and we underestimate what we can do in a week, right? So, but by time blocking, I think, it's going to help you to get more done throughout the week. Like you can actually utilize that week, even if in a given day, you might feel like you failed because you didn't, hit everything that you were supposed to do. So that's okay. And so what I like to do typically is I lean towards overestimating the blocks of time. So if I think something's going to take 15 minutes, I'll put it in a 30-minute time block, right? And then if I've got extra time left over after I'm done, let's say it did actually just take me 15 minutes and I've got 30 minutes there, that's usually extra time that I can just kind of relax, right? Take a break. Like, if I need to stuff something in there because something came up, I can do it. But most of the time it's like, if I'm done early, 15 minutes, I'll run downstairs, go grab a tea, go grab, some water, go, just see what the kids are doing, talk to them for a little bit. Like I know basically the way I schedule my meetings, I do a lot of appointments with agents on Zoom. and I schedule those meetings for 30 minutes, but I only allow them to be booked in like 1 hour increments. And so that allows me time to where, like, if the meeting goes over, I'm not stressed. But then also gives me just time to like regroup, after like a 40-minute meeting with an agent, I might just need some time to kind of just like understand everything that happened, log notes about it, think about what the next follow-up steps are. There's always like little extra things that we don't always think about, but when you give yourself more time, it allows you to just kind of like process. And then when you have that going throughout your day, it kind of helps you to stay on track throughout your day. And so typically I always use either 30 to 60-minute time blocks for whatever task that I'm doing. I try not to go much longer than 60 minutes for any given task that I put in a time block, because then it's really like going to get, you got to be really consistent, really committed, and really focused for something to do something like straight away longer than 60 minutes, right? If it's like, for me, writing a blog post, I know usually that's going to probably take me about 90 minutes. So like on special occasions, you could do that. Or if you're like, hey, I'm going to be making, prospecting calls and I'm going to hit the phone for an hour and a half, I know that I can do that consistently for 90 minutes. Great. But don't put like 6-hour blocks of time or 4-hour blocks of time, on your calendar, because it'd be very difficult to, it's going to be way too generalized. You're not going to really be able to stay consistent, and then you lose the benefits of time blocking. So just try and stick to 30 to maybe 60-minute time blocks. And just, if you do have like a big project, break that project down into the different steps. So like, it might be like step 1, I'm doing this for 30 minutes. Step 2, I'm doing this for 30 minutes. Step 3, I'm doing this for 30 minutes. Because what ends up happening, this is what's really cool. Like, I'm sure a lot of you guys probably experience this yourselves, but I do this myself. But like, if I have like an hour to do something and we're at like the 50th minute, like I kick it into like high gear or something. Like, I don't know where this comes from, but just having that time pressure makes me think of things differently, right? Like, we see things a little bit differently. And so, so then I can still get it done. And so having those smaller time blocks, yes, it might throw a little bit extra pressure on the situation, but at the same time, you're going to be able to get it done. And if you can't, like if it does go over the 30 minutes, you're still better off than if you just, put a big old time block out there and you gave yourself way too much time. So, that's where, like, for me, I would rather go with like shorter blocks, but still kind of give you a little bit of time there that you're overestimating. So if you think it's a 30-minute job or a 40-minute job, give yourself an hour. If you think it's a 15 or 20-minute job, give yourself 30 minutes, but try not to give too long of blocks. To-do lists and time blocking. So this is another one. So some people, they like to work off of to-do lists. For me, I always have a to-do list. Like, that's the list that I just showed you. I held up my notepad. I always have a to-do list. That's where like my ideas formulate. But then I have to move that into a place on my time blocked calendar, right? So like, I use both. I don't think that it's like an either or, like, oh, well, I just use a to-do list, I don't need to time block. I do think that everybody should still work off of a time blocked calendar. But you should also have a to-do list. Like, having a to-do list, I think is important too, because there's times where, if I've got 5-10 minutes in between an appointment or something, and I'm not going downstairs or I'm not doing anything, I can look at that and I can say like, oh, I need to, finish making this phone call. Like, I'll put some of the littlest things on my to-do list. Like I've got on here, one of the things was call to order rocks for my landscaper, right? Like, we're doing a landscaping job. I need to order the rocks. I put that on there just because even little wins, like, and I can just knock that out in 3 minutes. I like to scratch things off, right? So I'll put big things on my list. I'll put smaller things on my list. Literally anything goes on my to-do list. And then I just try and work and manage through that. And I do put things still into my time blocked calendar. So paper versus digital. I prefer paper. I just think that, yes, I know there's a lot of digital tools out there. Todoist is a very popular one. And then of course, having a digital calendar, that's also a very popular thing. I still use a digital calendar just because I link that up to Calendly and it helps for scheduling and stuff like that. But as far as like my to-do list, I like that to be on paper. So like, calendar and time blocking is digital for me. And then my to-do list is on paper. Some people, I mean, you might want to be like, actually have like a journal and like literally like write out the things, on your calendar. And that's fine too. Like, there is something just about writing things down and having it be on paper, that I think is really important. So I turn off my notifications, like literally, most of the time throughout my day, like while I'm working. I've got my iPhone set to focus mode. And yes, I might miss phone calls. Yes, I might miss text messages. If anybody knows me, if you text me, especially like a lot of my friends, they give me a hard time because they're like, man, you're the worst at texting. And like, and I am, because I don't see the stuff a lot of times during the day. And, I won't text back until like 6 hours later or something, which, sometimes that can be bad. But at the same time, like if I'm really trying to focus on something, I want to get it done, right? At the expense of all the other noise that's trying to be created in my life. But I think in general, though, for those that know me on like the inside, like let's say you're partners with me at EXP, like, there's ways to get my attention, right? Like I've got a very systematized way where it's like, hey, if we're going to work together, like this is how we do it. And so I'm very clear about that. And, you can like, I think I find it interesting. A lot of agents think like when they partner with me, like, oh my gosh, like, I actually get to like jump on a Zoom call with Kyle. Like they don't think that they would be able to do that, but it's like, no, absolutely you can do that, but it's got to be in the right format, right? It's got to be set up the right way. Cause like, you're not just gonna like call me or text me in most occasions. I mean, sometimes you can, like if it's the exact right time, but most of the time that's not going to happen. And I know as an agent, that might seem like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Like, I couldn't imagine not taking a phone call from a client or whatever. But I think you got to set the expectations up front, especially with your clients. And then, I mean, obviously, your schedule's better. If you've got a deal that's closing today or something, you might need to monitor your phone a little bit more. But there's definitely something to say about turning off notifications as frequently as possible, especially when you got to really get some work done, or if you're like prospecting and you're like, hey, this is my prospecting time. Like there might be some blocks where you just got to turn off your notifications, turn off all the incoming calls, all that type of stuff. To really get time, get your most effectiveness out of your time. And then you got to protect your time. A lot of us, especially, like for me, like you want to say yes to people. You don't want to, turn people down for any reason. But, if you're saying yes to everybody, you're definitely actually, hurting yourself in the long run. And you're hurting other people in the long run because, either you're going to drop the ball or you're eventually going to get so busy doing things that maybe are not the highest use of your time that you're going to say no to things consciously or, subconsciously where you don't even know that you're saying no to opportunities that could move the needle even further. And so you've got to protect your time. You got to really be strategic about your time. So like this all comes back to like, even when you're setting up your business plan, at the beginning of the year, like, what are you really supposed to be accomplishing? What are you supposed to be doing? Right. And then break that down. Then for this week or this month, what are your big rocks? Like, what do you need to accomplish? What do you need to do? And always have that be your guiding light, because you're going to get all sorts of things that come up that try to take your time or take your attention. And you got to be willing to say no to them or make them fit for what works for your schedule. Right. Like, and if they don't, then I'm sorry, it just doesn't work out. Right. But that's going to happen is protecting your time. And so the first thing you can do, this is a good intro to getting, time blocked. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, time blocking my entire calendar, my entire day. That's really overwhelming. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Start by just time blocking your mornings, 9 to noon. These are like the most important hours, I feel like, in anybody's business, any agent's day, 9 to noon. If you can just time block those hours to begin with, that's going to really help you out with not only one, getting started with a time block calendar, but then hitting those. Like you'll be like, hey, I can do that. Like I'm staying consistent to this time block. And you're not so worried about like, well, what if my day gets derailed or whatever, right? Like you're just trying to commit to a time blocked calendar from 9 to noon in the morning, right? So that'd be a good way to start it. Once you start saying like, okay, look, I've done this, I'm consistent with it. Now I'm ready to go, and do the afternoons. Now I'm ready to do the, up till 5 o'clock, like whatever it is. But just start with kind of in the morning. So, all right, guys, let me see here. I'm going to check the chats here. Let's see. All right, we got Robert. He says, "How's it going? Sub the other day. I caught you live. I'm a tile setter wanting to switch careers to a real estate agent at 41. I love it. Hey, man, you can do it. I mean, it takes work. Like, but being a tile setter, I don't know if you're, as a working for somebody or if you're, doing your own business, but there's a lot of different, a lot of things that you're going to, as far as a real estate agent goes, that you're going to learn as far as, having to be time block, having to have a business plan. But if you can be consistent and organized, it's going to give you the most freedom you can in your life. So Good luck to you, Robert. Thanks for appreciate that comment there. Go ahead and hide that there. Oh, we got Michelle. Michelle's coming in from San Antonio. Fellow San Antonio person. Love it. All right. Good to see you, Michelle. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and hop back over. Let's go pull up our slides here. There we go. And then let me go to our next one. So next, we're going to talk about the daily power list. All right. Who uses a daily power list? Let me see if you know what this is. If you're doing it, if you've heard about it, throw that in the chat there. I want to see how many of us. We got a little over 30 people on the stream right now. So if you are using that, I want to see what percentage of people are using a daily power list, or if you've heard of it. So first off, I don't take credit for this. Andy Frisella, the Real AF podcast. It's a little raw. I'm just telling you right now, if you do go subscribe or go listen to it, it's pretty raw. But there's a lot of good content on there, guys. But he kind of talked about the daily power list. And ever since I heard about it, I thought it's an amazing idea. Step number one is you need to get a journal, get something that, you can write in. And basically every new day is a new page. And so he actually sells a journal. I mean, you can buy his, or you can just use any journal really. But you want to get something that's like binded. So, you can flip through the pages and kind of see your progress over time. But get a binded journal. And what you're going to do with your daily power list. So what I do, how I do it is I've got my to-do list that's different than my daily power list. My daily power list is 5 things that I'm going to accomplish that day. Right. So like I'll have my big to-do list, and sometimes that has like big projects on it. It's just my like reminder of what I still need to do. But then each day I basically assign 5 things that I'm going to accomplish from that to-do list into my daily power list. Right. And so those 5 things, like it's not goals. So you can see here, not goals. It's got to be something that you're in control of. Right. So it's not like, well, I want to get 100 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Like that's not something you would put in your daily power list. You would put, I'm going to publish a YouTube video today, or I'm going to write a blog post today, or I'm going to call 50 people today. Like that's what it is, right? It's not going to, even if it was like, hey, I'm going to get a buyer's representation agreement, that's not in your control, right? So I wouldn't even put that. I mean, I guess you could technically call and try and set appointments and do stuff, but there's still a point where maybe you can't get a buyer's representation agreement no matter how hard you try, right? So you want to pick things that you're in control of. So like your actions, right? Calls, emails, texts, content creation, any of those types of things that you're in control of, use those for those 5 tasks that you want to be able to finish by the end of the day. And so basically it's an all or nothing, right? If you finish all 5 of them, like finish, not like, don't like, I did, some of this, but then I had to, kind of fudge this part of it because, I couldn't, like, you got to finish it, right? If you finish those 5 things, you get a win, you get a W, right? So you can actually write W, or if you've got his journal, you can actually, he puts a W and an L at the top, you just circle it, right? Or if not, you put an L, which stands for loss, right? And it's okay. I mean, I have losses on my journal. Trust me. Like I don't finish all 5 of my things. But here's the big thing, right? Number one, don't put more than 5 things. Because if you put more than 5 things, chances are they're either watered down, like they're not like big enough things that you're thinking about. So you need to think bigger as far as like the tasks that you're putting in there. Or number 2, if you're putting too big of tasks and too many of them, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You're not going to be able to do all 5 of them. So stick to 5, and you'll start to get the feel for it the more that you do it. But once you write them down, just the act of writing them down in a journal makes you feel more responsible, right? So like now you feel responsible to the outcome. Versus just saying that you're going to do it, or like if they're just on a big to-do list and you haven't like moved them over, that like it's on your daily power list. So that's really important. And then what you want to do is every week you add up your wins and add up your losses, and you want to get more wins for the week than you do losses. And so it's up to you how you choose to do this. Like you can do it 7 days a week. You can do it 5 days a week, right? Like I've done them in the past for 7 days. I choose now to do it 5 days a week. I'm good with that in my business. You may say, hey, I'm really good in my business. I just do it 3 days a week or something, right? But like I choose to work most weeks 5 days a week. And so I put a daily power list out 5 days a week. So each week, if I get 3 wins, right, or more, so versus two losses, I've won that week, right? So you want to win more days in the week to win the week, and you want to win more weeks in the month to win the month, right? Like, so ideally, you're just trying to win the month. Okay. So what that means is you don't have to be pressured that you're going to have to win every single day, right? Like none of us win every single day. Like things come up, things happen. But at the end of the day, if you're doing this day after day and you're putting down things on paper and you're striving to really accomplish, number one, it's just making you think differently because now you're having to think about what am I going to do? Like what can move the needle today? And so when you're doing that, it's going to help you get a lot better at being purposeful in the time that you've got time blocked for your power list. And so we'll talk a little bit once we get to our actual schedule here, as far as where you put the power list items in your schedule, because you're probably thinking, I've got a lot of things going on here. Some of the stuff maybe isn't power list items. I'll talk about that here in a second. All right, but the next thing we're going to talk about is delegation and systems, right? So you might be at a spot where you're like, hey, I'm doing all this, I'm time blocked, I'm efficient. But my issue is like, I need to scale up. I need to get more people to help out in order for me to accomplish more. Well, there's a couple things that I'll talk about here. So I'll talk about the 4Ds, and I don't even remember who I got this from. I read this a while ago and I just stuck with me. It was just really easy to remember. And so, basically just, use it. And so the first thing that you got to remember with these 4Ds is, I just remember, drop it, delegate it, defer it, or do it. Right. And so I'll explain what that means. Number one, if it doesn't directly impact your business plan or your goals, like if something comes across your desk, if somebody asks you to do something, always remember, have that business plan that you remember what you're trying to accomplish for this year, right? So like you got to have a business plan. I mean, I've talked about this a lot, but if you don't have a business plan, start there, right? Think about your business from a higher level, because then it's going to help you with your time blocking and just altogether your efficiency so much better when you have an actual guiding light, like a business plan. Because if it doesn't like directly impact your business plan, what you want to accomplish, it's not, taking down a rock, it's not, helping you to scale something up, then you just got to drop it, say no to it, right? Like you're not going to do it. So that's an easy one. The second part, and this is probably one of the most important ones, is to delegate it. Like literally, if somebody else can do it, you need to delegate it. Like that's how I feel, at least in my business right now. Like if it doesn't absolutely need me to do it, like I've got to do the videos, right? Like I'm not going to delegate. I can't delegate going live to somebody else. I can't delegate going and making the videos on my YouTube channel myself. I could, but my channel would be all different, right? It would be a whole different experience. And the experience that I'm trying to give, I've got to be present, right? So like that's something I do. Like that's on my calendar. It's on my time block, everything, right? But like if there's anything else that like I don't have to do, I find out a way to delegate it, right? Defer it. So if it does need to be me, like if it does take my direct attention, but it doesn't necessarily need to be done this exact moment, I will defer it. I'll put it on my to-do list, right? And then I'll try and organize when it's going to take place after that point. Or the last thing is to do it, right? It must be done now by me, right? But hopefully there's not too many of those things that you have to do. And you might be thinking there is. I know I was in those shoes too, where it was like, only I can do this. I know best. But I promise you, the better you get at delegating and the more frequently you get doing it, the easier it gets over time to start just delegating more and more stuff, right? A lot of us have that symptom where it's like, we don't think anybody can do it as well as us. And it is tough, to give up that control in the beginning, but the more you can do it, it will lead you to be a better manager. It'll allow you to scale more and kind of take your business to places it would have never gone if you felt like you had to do everything. All right. So like that's delegation, and it does take time. Like it takes time to be a person who does delegate. Like you might have to go and hire people, which takes time, like virtual assistants. Like it doesn't have to take a ton of time. I'm not talking about like, going through this big process where you're putting, an ad out and you're like hiring somebody, full time, and you have to talk about long-term salaries and benefits and then like interview a bunch of people. Like literally, I mean, I hire multiple people in a month, right? Like, and I just like, hey, I need social media help. Like, I'm going to go, put a post up on Upwork and, get a couple people to respond, see who I get the best feeling from, and just go, right? I know that I need to delegate, so I'm willing to just basically make those things happen. And so, all right, let's see here. The next thing, so key actions of a delegator. So here's important: when you start to delegate, and you obviously want to have, expectations, like you want to have like when you go start delegating, you don't want your experience, you don't want like what people know you for to start to suffer, right? So like you have to set expectations, and you got to think through what could these expectations be. And you may not know them all at the beginning. So like you will, find that like you'll have to reset new expectations while you're, working with somebody else. But that's the first thing you got to be able to do, is to be able to set clear expectations. You got to be able to state the consequences. Like, like what happens if these expectations are not met? What would be the next step, right? Like, what would you have to do? What would they have to do? Like, what happens if what your like quality is, like, if the quality is not up to par? Like, are they going to have to change it out? Maybe give you a couple extra drafts so you can, get some different ideas. Are you going to have a couple different people working for the job and just let them know, like, hey, I'm talking to 4 people right now. I'm going to have you each, like I do this a lot. I'm going to have you each, edit a video, and I'm going to go with the person who I feel is, most on brand for me. Right. So, being upfront with them, like, I'm going to give you this, it's a trial opportunity, but if you don't make it work, then, then these are the consequences. Following through on those consequences, right? And this could be hard, right? Like if you say, hey, I expect this, if it's not done, this is what happens. You got to follow through on what you said you were going to do if they didn't meet those consequences. All right. Let's see here. I am looking here through the comments, seeing we got a couple here. I think Lily says, you're so right on about our time, protecting it and learning to say no. Yeah, that's once you can start to manage that better, you definitely can be more efficient with your time. Being an agent is already tough. I mean, we get so many distractions all the time. Things trying to take our time, our attention away, like just having to go, show a house, or, like all these different appointments that we got to leave our house from. So the more that you can control by saying no to certain things, the more efficient you'll be. Like I got so much more efficient when I could not have to leave my house quite as frequently. Like, I still have to leave my house from time to time to go to appointments and do things like that. But the less times that I've got to leave my house and go do something, the easier it is for me to get more done. So like this involves everything. Like literally just the other day or yesterday, I had some mobile, car wash guy come to my house because I was tired. The best car wash, for me is, I've got to go and like spray the car off because my van won't fit and all this stuff. And it's like a big ordeal. It takes like 2 or 3 hours. And like, I'm like, no, I'm going to have somebody come to me because I don't even want to drive my van to somewhere and have them wash it here. That way I can stay at my house. I can stay, doing what I'm doing. I have Amazon literally deliver like everything. I mean, groceries get delivered, like everything gets delivered to the house. So I don't have to worry about ever leaving my house if I don't have to, right? Just so I can be as efficient as possible. And yes, sometimes I got to take sanity breaks and just like literally leave my house to go grab a cup of coffee or something. That's because I choose to. And I just need to get out to get a little bit of a break. But most of the time, like I'm just trying to make sure I'm committed to staying focused, not getting distracted by all sorts of other things. So, yep. Love that. All right. Let's see. Making the jump to FT agent, full-time agent in 2 weeks. Was thinking about what I should be focusing on out of the gate. Well, I mean, obviously it's a tough question for me to answer for you, not knowing your skills and kind of like, your like what you're coming from and your past history. But like for me, I think obviously prospecting in one way or the other, it should be the only thing an agent focuses on when you go full time or really anytime when you're just kind of like kicking things off again. You've got to be, always lead generation, prospecting, follow-up, lead generation, prospecting, follow-up. Like how you do lead generation is up to you. I mean, I don't know if you want to call expireds, for sale by owners. Well, not really. So, I mean, expired isn't too big of a deal right now, but for sale by owners, maybe you want to do like open houses and do them 4 times a week. Maybe you want to, you got a big sphere of influence and you're just going to get more purposeful about reconnecting with them and reaching out to them. Maybe you're a Google Ads expert and you got some money to spend. and you want to run ads and do that type of thing. There's all sorts of different ways. So, I mean, like that's up to you. But the thing is, the key is that you stay committed to it, you stay consistent with it, you track it, you measure it, and you keep going. So good luck to you, Conrad. Let's see here. Christina, she says, create that business plan and color coordinate your schedule. Each color represents tasks, appointments, priorities, and non-negotiables, and visit a new builder each week. Love it. Those are all great tips. 100%. Yeah, my calendar is color coordinated for different, like I've got a couple different calendars that, pop up on there. And so each calendar for me is color coordinated. I don't color coordinate each different task, but definitely I can see where that could be important. Like if you know that there's different categories that you're doing, I think that's a great suggestion, Christina. Love it. All right. So now let's go ahead and move back over to a couple delegation things. Last part here, just tips is when you're delegating and you've got a new task or like a new person that's working on the task, more frequent feedback is very important in the beginning of that task. Like, don't think that you're just gonna be able to delegate something in the beginning and throw your hands up, be like, I'm out, like I don't need to do anything. You got to be very much still like watching it like a hawk, kind of looking at it, seeing like, how's this thing going? How's it not, what's the metrics telling me on this? You got to do that. You can't just like hand it off and expect it to be perfect and just think that it's going to go without a hitch. You got to be giving feedback, like what your expectations are. And chances are the person that's taking over that task for you, they need that, right? They want it. Like, they don't want to just be doing the wrong job for, weeks on end before they finally figure out like, oh, I was doing it wrong this whole time. Like, give feedback throughout the process. And then once you start to have the habit built and like they know your system, they know your process, you know your system, then at that point, yes, you might not need to check in as frequently. But like, for instance, I love, just like quick 5-15 minute, daily stand-up meetings where you just check in on certain things. Sometimes it may not be a whole lot new that you got to talk about, but sometimes there may be, right? Like a new situation could have come up, or, or that daily meeting, maybe you decided to like look into something that you hadn't looked into in a while, and you notice something in your business, right? So having those small, frequent meetings, 5 to 15 minutes a day with whoever it is that you're delegating things out to, in the very beginning especially, can be really important. You may not, you can go maybe a couple days or maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, as you start to like get more comfortable with the person and what they're doing for you. But definitely in the beginning, having those more frequent meetings is really important. All right. So we're going to talk about the ideal schedule. Here's the, and so take it for what it's worth. This is what I feel my ideal schedule is for a real estate agent. But number one, this might hit a lot of people hard. You may need to wake up earlier, right? I'm just going to throw that out there. Like maybe that's you right now. You're waking up at 8 o'clock. That is a recipe for disaster in real estate. If you're waking up at 8 o'clock, it's going to be really hard to have success. I'm just going to say that. You might say, object to me and say, hey, Kyle, I'm a super productive agent. I sell millions of dollars of real estate and I wake up at 8 or 9 o'clock, but that's not common, right? And probably if you're in that shoes, you're not a new agent. Like you've been doing it for a while or whatever, right? But if you're a new agent, you got to hit it hard. Like 6:30 is, I think, honestly, like the max. Like I wake up at 5:30, 5:45 most days, right? But I just put 6:30 so I don't like offend too many people. But 6:30, wake up, have some coffee, right? Like that's what I do. I sit down real quick. It's quiet in my house at that point. I drink my coffee. 7 o'clock, I'm in the gym, do a workout, get my heart rate up, kind of get things going, wake up. Like I'm not getting ready before I go to the gym. So I mean, it doesn't 30 minutes, that's even still quite a while, like just to drink coffee. But maybe you want to meditate. Maybe there's just something else you want to do, read a little, passage of the Bible or whatever, right? But do that, but then hit the gym, get your heart rate up, get things going, have a light breakfast, maybe a banana, an apple, or a bowl of cereal, whatever, and then get ready, right? And you might be thinking, man, I can't even get ready in an hour. Well, if that's you, then maybe wake up a little bit earlier or something, right? Like if it takes you 45 minutes to get ready, it takes me about 20-25 minutes to get ready, right? That's like shower, brush my teeth, usually put a hat on. I know it's a lot easier for a guy. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, you might be thinking like, oh, I got to do my hair, got to do my makeup, takes longer. We'll figure that out, to where you can be in like work mode by 8 o'clock, maybe like 8:15 at the latest, because here's the thing that you're going to want to start out by doing, especially as a new agent. You want to find a partner agent that you can do role playing and script practice with. So whatever that means, like whatever your lead generation source, find somebody else who's doing that same source as you, and just be and say, hey, I want to partner up. Like, we're going to try and mastermind and figure this thing out together. Maybe it's 3 or 4 or 5 people, but at least have 2 people. And a lot of times when you think of role playing, you think of like, over the phone. And maybe you're like, well, but I don't do cold calls. I don't do that. So I don't need to worry about role playing. No, we all need to role play. Like, I don't care if your thing is social media text messaging, right? Or instant messaging. Like, you could still be saying like, hey, what are you saying in this scenario? Like, what are you saying to open up your discussion with people? Like, what are you like? Role playing could mean all sorts of things, but having somebody else that's doing what you're doing and you're both kind of communicating what it is that you're corresponding, because prospecting is universal. Like, we all have to prospect, but it just might be different, the method that you're prospecting. But find somebody who's prospecting the same way as you, that you can open up the beginning of your day, first 30 minutes, with just talking back and forth. You might, have a scenario that they bring up, and then you talk about how you would say it. They talk about how they handled it. You might learn some stuff, but that's really, really important, is having a part of your day for role playing or script practice. And then for the next 2 hours, 8:30 to 10:30, lead generation follow up, right? You might be thinking, oh, that's early to call people. Technically, the best time to call people in any given day is between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning, and 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the afternoon, right? So like 8:30 is not too early to start making phone calls. It might be uncomfortable for you. You might feel early, and it might offend some people, but so be it. These are the best times to call, right? 8:30 to 10:30. So that's when you want to have your lead generation and follow up. That is a time block on your calendar. And you might break that up, right? Like, as I said, 30 minutes to 60 minutes. So I might put on there, or 90 minutes at the latest. I might put, 60 minutes lead generation, prospecting, right? And then 60 minutes follow up, or 30 minutes follow up, and then 30 minutes, doing something else like messaging, right? But just keeping it equal. So like, I know 60 minutes I'm going to be on the phone just prospecting new business. 30 minutes I'm going to be on the phone following up with people. 30 minutes I'm going to be on messaging and emails and following up with people that way, right? Whatever that is, but use 2 hours to basically go out and prospect and try and get new leads and try and drum up business, whatever way that you have decided in your business plan that you're going to do that. And then that's once I've done that lead generation and follow up. Now at this point, this is where I start trying to knock out some stuff on my daily power list. I give myself roughly about 2.5 hours per day just to work on my daily power list, right? Because I've got 5 items that I want to accomplish. And most of these items I try to, they're about 30 minutes or so to complete them, right, on each one. And some are not, right? Like, some might be an hour to complete. But I know that on average they'll be 30 minutes. So if it's an hour one, well, then another one probably is a little bit shorter. But either way, about 2.5 hours, you should knock out your daily power list things, which again, these are the things that you want to do. And you might even say like, well, hey, part of my daily power list is to make, X amount of calls. And you might knock some of that out while you're, doing your lead generation and your follow-up. That's not wrong. You can do that, right? For me though, like I say, there's always something, like whether it's with my website, just little to-do tasks that I need to get done, right? And so I always have 5 other things that I'm trying to do in addition to, like, all the follow-up and stuff like that I'm also trying to do to move the needle. So I do an hour and a half before lunch. I do an hour after lunch. And then from 2 to 5, after 2 o'clock, once I've finished my daily power list, this is where I start to set appointments. And so, 2 to 5, I'm setting appointments. Like in the morning, I'll try and set appointments for the afternoon. Sometimes I'll be setting appointments from 5 to 8, right? Like if you get people that just, they got to see stuff after work or whatever, then I've got appointments from 5 to 8. If I don't have appointments from 5 to 8, I relax. I take the day, like I'm done working for the day. 2 to 5 though, if I don't have appointments, I'm either doing more lead generation and follow up, or I'm finishing up things on my daily power list, right? Like if I didn't finish them in the time before, but that's it. Lead generation, follow up, daily power list. Like those are your most important things that you want to always be doing every single day. So cool. All right. That's the ideal schedule, guys. I don't know, hopefully, if you've never seen anything like that, maybe that's, a new schedule you can try and take on. But remember what I said at the beginning though, too. Don't try and necessarily just change up your entire business from day one. That's very tough to do. It's very challenging. Take any part of this ideal schedule and start working towards it. Maybe it's just waking up at 6:30. Maybe it's like, I'm going to get started with my day, work wise at 8 o'clock, right? And then you time block from 8 o'clock to noon. Like, this is what I'm going to do from 8 o'clock to noon. I'm going to take that part of your calendar. Like, whatever you want to do, but start smaller. Like, don't say like, I'm going to, implement all of this stuff, right away, because it's going to be really tough, really challenging. But do as much as you can. Come back. Remember, I did this video, watch it again if you need to down the road, and then implement the next thing, right? So, all right, let's go ahead and see what else we got. Christina S asks, what books do you recommend for new agents? Good question, Christina. One of my favorite books still, I would say, is MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the red book. It's kind of like the Bible for real estate agents, if you will, by Gary Keller. I mean, it's a great book, just about, how to think about your business. He does talk about, having a business plan, kind of starting there, getting to that 7th level in your business, which I don't know if I so much agree on that side of it, but at least, the first part about, as a new agent specifically, getting started with, like what to do during your given day, but also like treating your business like a business. I think that's a really good book. The One Thing, which is another Gary Keller book, it's important, basically how to stay focused and not get distracted. I mean, that's another really good book. I like What to Say, or Exactly What to Say, something like that, by Chris Smith. It basically gives you a lot of different scenarios and like scripts for like how to approach a situation. So that's another good book that I would recommend as a new agent, just to kind of understand, because a lot of times agents don't take a lot of action in the very beginning because they're just nervous of like a scenario that might come up that they're unsure of. So like kind of getting more aware of like what to do can kind of help out there. Another book that I like is 6 Steps to 7 Figures. That one is by Pat Hyben. That's a really good book as well. Let's see. By the way, I've got a book list on my blog. If you go to kylehandy.com, and I think you can just search, real estate books or something like that on my website. And basically there, I've got a list, I think, of the top 25 books that I recommend for real estate agents. Or if you just go on Google and search Kyle Handy real estate books, it'll pull up, right? And but yeah, I've got a bunch of different book recommendations, but just those ones are like the first ones off the top of my mind that I would say, to go check out as a new agent. So, all right, cool, guys. Well, hey, one more reminder. If you haven't already, you got value out of this video, make sure to hit that like button. That really helps out my videos. I really appreciate it. And then also, if you're not a subscriber yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday when we'll be back here, same spot, same place. And yeah, I just appreciate all the comments, all the feedback. We had a lot of good comments this time, and I was just watching everybody, a lot of interaction. So really love it, guys. If you're watching this on the replay and you made it all the way to the end, type in hashtag #EndCrew, ENDCREW, end crew. It's what for all my videos. I love to see who watches all the way to the end. So type that into the comments if you're watching this on the replay, or you can even type it into the comments if you're watching this live. So, but just thank you guys so much. I really appreciate everybody tuning in, and I hope that you have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.